Hello everyone, welcome back. Today's video is about harvesting potatoes, which is a lot of fun. So if you've never grown potatoes, definitely give it a try. You know when it's ready to harvest when you see the plants, they look dead like that. They'll get brown and kind of crispy. And in terms of how to harvest potatoes, you just jump right in and start digging basically. Now these are in raised beds. And so one of the cool things about potatoes is that they kind of grow in hills. And so you kind of hill up the dirt, and most of your potatoes are going to be kind of above or around where you planted your seed potato. So it isn't like your potatoes are going to be like 3 feet underground or something like that. They're going to be pretty much near the surface. So you have to check every once in a while during the summer too to make sure that they're not sticking out of the ground, because they will. You can kind of see here, parts of them will kind of stick up, and you don't want the sun to get them. So, and they'll turn green. You don't want that. Even those little baby potatoes are good. So in terms of potatoes, like I mentioned for harvest, you see the plants turning yellow and brown and kind of getting crispy, and you know that only bad things are going to happen at that point. It's not going to grow anymore in the ground when the plant's dead. It's your cue to go ahead and harvest your potatoes. You can see how they grow. The roots of the plant kind of swell, and then the potatoes grow either at the end or along the root, usually at the end, but sometimes I've noticed along the root too, will pop up a few. You're always going to get some that don't finish, and so it isn't like if you leave those little ones in the ground longer. These are all Adirondack blue. I don't know if I mentioned that, but it isn't like if you leave them in the ground longer, when the plants are like that, they're going to grow any bigger. The plant's basically dead, and so the potato in the ground isn't going to do anything, except sometimes the skins will get a little harder, which is good for storage, but you can just set them out like in a cool, dark place, like a garage underneath some newspaper or something like that, so they can breathe, and they will kind of get some nice skins on them anyway. But see those plants, when they look like that, that's time to harvest the potato. Look at the size of some of these. It's really fun. So harvesting potatoes, it's low tech. You just kind of dig around, and like I mentioned, they're going to be basically above or around where the seed potato was. So when you plant them, you just plant a potato in the ground, and one potato makes a plant, and then that plant will make many, many potatoes. And so the original potato you planted will be like goo at this point. If you're digging around, you find like this gooey, rotten potato. That's probably your seed potato. But yeah, these are just such a productive crop to grow in your garden. And they're a lot of fun, harvesting. You just, because they're underground, you're digging around, and all of a sudden you come up with these gigantic potatoes. But just definitely something that if you haven't grown potatoes, you should give it a try. There's also nothing like the flavor of a freshly harvested potato. So here's just a whole bunch that we just, as we're picking, we're laying them out on the ground there. Best, so these are in a raised bed. The soil's really, really loose. It's the easiest way to harvest them. If you start digging around with a shovel, you're going to chop them in half and stuff like that. But here's our first harvest, our Adirondack blue. We have 3 varieties, but some really good sized ones in there. And like I said, the little ones aren't going to get any bigger once the plants die like that. This is a bushel basket, so it's probably like a third of a bushel. See that right there? That's the seed potato. Kind of gooey and nasty looking. That's what I originally planted back in the early summer. Here's Yukon Gold. So these are also, you'll see a little less productive, but still pretty good. We actually dug around in there and harvested some already for a dinner. Now that's something you can do with potatoes too. You don't have to harvest them all at one time. If, for example, you decide a couple weeks before your major harvest, you really want some potatoes in the garden, you can just kind of go out there. They're going to be near the surface. You can just reach around with your hand, pull a few out, and use them for dinner that night. That's totally something we do a lot, actually. We did that with these Yukon Gold. See, that one's green. They're going to poke up through the surface, and if they get green, then they can turn really bitter, and they can have some sort of poisonous chemicals in them because they are a member of the nightshade family. So you don't want that. They'll start to photosynthesize and turn green like that. So you want to keep them buried under the dirt, because as they grow, they'll kind of pile up on top of each other. They don't go down so much as they grow up and out, like left and right. So if you have hills, like we made little hills in this raised bed, a lot of times they're going to be on both sides of the hill, trying to poke out the sides too and get sunlight. So here's our russets, and some of them are big, some of them are small. There's some good sized ones in there. Russets are usually pretty good for us, and I don't mind when they don't get huge, because we don't really make we don't really make baked potatoes out of them anyway, so you don't necessarily need like one gigantor, although that one right there is pretty awesome looking. A couple really good ones, but we chop them up and cook them typically. But russet potatoes are really also pretty productive to grow. Like Adirondack Blue and Russet are the ones that we just get tons and tons of for the space involved. This raised bed is like 5 feet wide, and the area I planted them in is probably like 5 feet wide. And look at that, just monstrous. That's one plant right there, one plant worth of. So one potato made all of those potatoes, one seed potato. So that's kind of like a cool thing when you plant them. That's the multiplier effect of them. But if there's a nice size russet there. The bed is probably 5 feet wide by maybe 6-7 feet of bed. So 35 square feet, and we ended up with like 3/4 of a bushel basket full of these things. So it's pretty awesome. And you don't use a lot of space for. You don't have to use a lot of space for potatoes. You can grow them in containers, but growing them in the ground in a raised bed, you're just going to get a lot more yield for the space involved. I've done both, and of course, when you only have a container garden as we used to, that was the only choice. But in the ground, you just get a beautiful, beautiful yield. So thank you for watching, and consider growing potatoes. You probably won't regret it.